Ray Forest Puppy, RFP, announces he's figured out how to do SQL injection attacks. And then very soon after that, Guess loses 500,000 credit cards from their website. We start having the Sammy XSS worm. Does anybody remember that attack? Self-propagating cross-site scripting worm across MySpace. Eventually took down MySpace for a number of hours. First really self-propagating code on the web. Then we have mass SQL injection defacements. It's the first time we really had defacements across a wide variety of websites. Typically before then we were seeing single-site attacks. Someone was hacking Guess, someone was hacking MySpace. Mass SQL injection defacements across a wide variety of websites. Then we have the Heartland breach, biggest credit card breach in history. All started with a SQL injection vulnerability on a non-credit card taking website. They used that to gain entry. That's when we kind of woke up to the fact that while we might protect the main website, the bad guys can get in through the side door because we weren't really paying attention to those auxiliary websites moving forward. Then in 2010, websites are the most common pathway, and then the most breaches ever reported for web applications last year. We're not doing a great job as an organization. So let's look at where we are today and why we're in this mess. You have this is the NIST secure SDLC process. Oh my God. How can I do that? This is the BSIM. If you're familiar with BSIM, it's another secure software development methodology. Large and cumbersome, extremely complex, right? That's how a lot of security people look at it. Very academic way to look at it. Let me put all these processes in place, this huge checkbox. How do we write code today for the most part? This is how we're doing it. Agile, right? A lot of companies doing Agile. We use Agile, love Agile. Great way to write software for your business. It's very fast. We do about 3-week iterations. Most people do 2-week iterations. They're pushing code to production every 2 weeks. There are companies, there's Kaching, I think they have a different name now. They literally push code every minute. So they have this big box, developer commit, test, and you get shipped to production, right? That's how people want to write code. Then you look at a large enterprise. This is a breakdown and classification of the types of apps you have, right? From our customers that we do thousands of websites for, we see about 15% of them are active. And what I mean by active is you have developers writing code, it's going through a QA process, it's getting shipped to production, right? On an ongoing, continuous basis. Very agile. Then roughly 25% of them are what I call maintenance mode, right? They're probably on your main language stack. Let's say you're a Java shop, they're probably written in Java. They're not really being actively developed, but if you need to fix them, you could probably find a developer on your team to fix them. And then the most interesting thing for us as we roll out to large enterprises, we found roughly 60% of them what I call legacy, right? Someone's brother-in-law in 2006 wrote this marketing website in PHP. You have no PHP developers on site. No one knows what it is, but it's very important to the company because it's producing revenue, something like that. There's a massive number of those websites out there. And as we roll out across enterprises, again with thousands of apps, I was shocked to find how many of them fit into that category. Right? They all require different solutions to securing them. I cannot apply massive BSIM to apps I don't even have the source code developers for. That doesn't make any sense. Even maintenance mode apps. I might be able to do it on my active apps, but it's still too cumbersome. And then let's look at the spending. This is a very interesting slide that Jeremiah Grossman created. You're spending the most money on your applications, developing them, writing them, coding them internally. You usually have large staffs or offsite teams. You're spending most of your money doing this. You're spending some on host-based security, and you're spending a little bit on network security, right? Well, now you're going to rip out all your firewalls and replace them with F5 firewalls, so you might spend a little more at that. But that's the spending today, as we see it across most enterprises. This is what your actually security budget is generally allocated for, right? You're spending a lot on network host, and you're not spending a lot on securing your networks, right? It's completely reversed, right? None of this fits. It doesn't make any sense. It's not working together. Which leads us to these statistics here. We saw this, Carl threw this up in his presentation today. This is across approximately 10,000 websites that we have under active management. This is the breakdown of the things we find, right? We find, if we don't find a vulnerability on a website, our internal numbers are higher than 80%. If we don't find a vulnerability on a website, we think we've done a terrible job and something's wrong. Right? Everybody has problems out there. Then when you multiply that across many applications, you have an intractable problem. Then this is where it gets even scarier. So once we find a vulnerability, how long does it take you to actually fix that vulnerability if you're going to go back to the dev team, right? Again, this is actual real-world data that we have collected from our customers. So of the vulnerabilities that have been fixed, which is only about half of them, this is how long it took, right? Best case scenario, predictable resource location. This is like, a backup directory, a temp directory that has some critical data. 30 days to fix that. Right? Most other ones, 2 to 3 months. So you're vulnerable that entire time. Then another interesting statistic that we have is really how many days in a year do you have a serious vulnerability on your website? Again, real-world data collected from our customers. The best industry, banking, still 16% of the websites are vulnerable to a serious vulnerability every single day of the year. Right? Very few of them are rarely vulnerable, 51%. Everyone's vulnerable kind of all the time. Again, this is a consequence of having security processes not matching with development processes and not having any flexibility. If you don't use an F5 ASM, you have to go to your dev team, convince them to allocate resources to fix these vulnerabilities. The businesses don't like that. You have to start matching and getting agile. Again, Mark already showed this, Verizon Data Beach report. All of them, or a vast majority of them, are happening over the web. Everywhere. It's not a good thing. If you look at the roster of people who have been hacked, really over the last year, it's not banking, it's not finance, it's literally everyone out there. As Mark said, nonprofits hosting malware, people stealing data. It's a large problem across a large industry segment. If the CIA can't protect their websites, we know we have a problem, right? So, what really should we be doing? How do we fix this problem, right? Security must be agile. With the White Hat solutions, we can integrate into agile processes. That is where we were founded, that is where we were started. I'm going to briefly talk about Sentinel Source. It's a new offering that's going to be released in July. It fits directly into your continuous build environment in the development process. So we look at the source code as the developers are writing it. They commit it to the source code repository. We trigger a scan. We scan that code. If it has a problem, we kick it back to the developer and we say, hey, you need to fix this, right? That is a very efficient way of going about it. The developer has just committed the code, it's fresh in his mind, I have a problem, I'm going to go fix that code, right? Static analysis does a great job at finding lack of security controls. It doesn't necessarily find vulnerabilities. It says you are not filtering user input for a SQL injection here, and it's going to the database. That's what static analysis is really great for. Then we have our dynamic pre-launch product, which is really aimed at QA, and it does dynamic testing of the application in a runtime environment. So it's great if you have a security control in place. If that security control allows me to do bad things, allows me to drive a Mack truck through your filter, it's not really going to help you. So we tested it in a runtime environment with pre-launch. Very fast and extremely accurate. We verify every single vulnerability that comes out of our scanner. You get no false positives because they will kill you on an enterprise-wide basis. Then once you actually release code to production, we have 3 different service lines depending on value of that asset, complexity of that asset, and how much you need to do it, right? We are the pioneer in scanning production websites. We've scanned production websites since day 1. We believe firmly that if you're not scanning production, you don't know what's going on. My favorite story is we had a customer that we were scanning QA and production. No vulnerabilities in QA. They shipped to production, no vulnerabilities in production. About 3 days later, all of a sudden they have 150 cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. And they call us up and they're like, hey guys, you've clearly made a mistake here. How can we have all these vulnerabilities in production and not have them in QA? What's going on? So we dig in, we look. They're not in QA. They're in production. They're not in QA. Why? They're using Microsoft ISS. ISS server has a URL filtering device that blocks cross-site scripting. You turn on, turn off. So when they shipped the code to production, they had a partner data feed coming in. That filter was breaking that partner data feed. They could not get that partner data feed through. So the fix was to turn off that in production. Bingo, 150 cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in production that are not in QA. We have yet to find a case where we're scanning QA and production that the vulnerabilities are the same. different environments, different configurations, and that's where you're going to get hacked in production. Haven't heard of anybody getting hacked in QA yet, or in development. So we firmly believe this is, in production, is where you measure the efficiency of all the things you're doing ahead of time, right? You must measure, you must be aware of what's going on in production. And that's really where our integration with the F5 ASM comes in. Because again, as Mark mentioned, you have to be agile. You find the things in production, you mitigate them with the F5 ASM. Now you can go and you can put that vulnerability in the normal dev cycle. Maybe it gets fixed in the next sprint if you're doing agile. Maybe it gets fixed in 2 weeks. You have given your business the flexibility to make decisions in real time while you're still being productive in production. Extremely important. You're not going in, stopping work, getting done. So does anybody have any questions so far? All right. So here's how we work. And we are really unique in this space because we not only combine highly scalable technology, but we have the smartest engineers on the planet in our Threat Research Center. If you look at some of the bug bounty programs that have been put out, Facebook basically had an open invitation to hack them. Google, Mozilla, all had that. We are the most represented company in that list, by far. We have some of the smartest and most intelligent web application security engineers on the planet. So it's very simple. You give us the URL of the website. Our Threat Research Center configures the scanner, does all the verification. We handle all of that work for you. If it goes awry, we handle that for you. If it generates 1 gazillion false positives, we handle all that for you. You see only real validated vulnerabilities. And that's extremely important as you roll this out through the enterprise, right? If you take an example of you have 100 web apps out there, you scan them with technology, and let's just say it's the best technology on the planet, and it only generates 5 false positives per website. You are now dealing with 500 false positives. That's something that you really don't want to do on a daily basis. We remove all those for you. We have all that gets generated to our interactive website. You can give developers access to it. Any number of people in your company, you can divide it out and partition it by business units. So business units in America, business units in Asia can only see their websites, and they have access to those vulnerabilities. You can give them fine-grained access to where they can only see the vulnerabilities, not handle scans, not see the vulnerabilities, etc. So it's really built for enterprise-wide deployments. Then we have API. Then that's where our integration with F5 as well as bug tracking systems. So we have an integration with Jira if you use Jira for bug tracking system, Mozilla. So you can take those vulnerabilities and put them into the environment that the developers are comfortable working in, right? You can give them access to the website or not. Because to a developer, cross-site scripting is just a bug. They need to fix it. It's work for them to do. So leave it in their environment. And then, of course, our dynamic integration with F5 ASM to actually mitigate those vulnerabilities in real time very easily from within the ASM interface. So from within the ASM interface, you put in your API key, bring those vulnerabilities over, put them immediately into blocking mode, or stage them, as Mark mentioned earlier, to make sure they're not going to impact your users. Very, very flexible solution. So if you take a look at the landscape again, if you have, for those 50% of actively developed applications, you can apply a full stack solution. Premium Edition service, pre-launch, and our soon-to-be-released static analysis Sentinel source to really provide full stack, full deep coverage all the way back to development, and again, mitigating with the F5 ASM in production. It's a great solution. We're the only company that really goes that deep and also allows you to go that wide. For the maintenance and legacy applications, again, from what we find, the majority of the applications out there where an SDLC doesn't make any sense, really from a business flexibility standpoint, you scan them with one of our production service lines and mitigate those vulnerabilities with F5, and you go down the road. Right? I don't need involved dev time, but I am secure now with my patches in place. And I have compensating controls, and I'm not worried about that. Right? Very, very important. So again, really the current state of what we're doing in the space is not very pretty from an operational standpoint, right? We're highly vulnerable, and the bad guys know it. Processes don't fit the development and the business speed, right? Typical security processes, very academic, very cumbersome, very heavy. Does not work. We must be agile. And there's really no solution that fits everything, right? We have big, cumbersome processes. They work for Microsoft because they develop, 2-year dev cycles. It works great for them. It doesn't really work on the web.